everything. So what Beth is doing is laying the top over the batting, which is on top of the backing, and so she will have a sandwich very soon. So you can see why she didn't want the customer to bring a pre-made sandwich, because their pre-made sandwich wouldn't look anything like this.
No.
Or draped on a hanger.
I think Beth didn't measure her fabric right. Well, normally I only like 3 to 4 inches on a side. I'm having a little bit more on this one, but that's okay. Make it work.
And when she says 3 to 4 inches on the side, she means 3 to 4 extra inches beyond which, beyond the edge of the top.
Right. And it's on 3 inches to 4 inches on each side, top and bottom.
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for that is that, as you can see, I need extra for pinning. And then on the sides, I'm going to be clamping to keep the tension good. You got to have room for those clamps.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is pretty.
It's a pretty scrappy quilt too. It's got a lot of different motifs in it, fabric wise.
This is made by one of our guild members for her kids. I hope you don't mind me sharing it. Went on the frame sooner than you thought it would. A good one to show. Y'all see me, I use my feet a lot. I'm very careful. I'm just using the top of my foot. I'm not using the sole of it. It's better than stepping on your quilt.
Right.
And I vacuum. Kathleen saw me, I usually vacuum before each quilt. Especially if it's got white in it. For a couple reasons I'll show you in a minute. All right, now I think I got it on nice and straight, the top part. So now I want to start with basting. So I got out of that regulated stitch. I'm going back into stitch, and I'm going to pick baste. And a basting too, you have different choices on the length of your stitch. I like to use 1/2 inch. And this I don't lock any straight. I just handle it myself with that.
And we're going to try and do a close-up here of this first beginning. So just like if you were quilting this for yourself, what Beth just did was pull up the bobbin thread to the top, then she does a few locking stitches, right?
Right. And then I click the start for the base, and then all I have to do is push. As you can see, I'm not doing anything but pushing my machine along.
So this is a basting stitch now. So she did not baste the back to the batting, but she is basting the top to the other 2 layers.
And I try to keep it within the 1/4 inch. That way you don't have to worry about pulling this out when you go to put your binding on. You can just leave it in there. Yeah, the quilting doesn't go to the edge everywhere, so this keeps it stable. Or putting your bindings on.
So you'll also notice that Beth is not pulling on any fabric, but she's kind of gently holding around where she's basting here.
Wonderful wide border on this quilt. Sometimes that can be a bad issue because it'll get wavy if it hasn't been put on correctly. This has been put on perfectly, so I'm having no issues with bulkiness or waviness.
What are the most common problems with borders or wide borders, Beth? What do you mean if it's not put on and it's wavy?
All right. If the piecer did not measure correctly, like measuring the length exactly on both sides and in the middle, and then taking the average of those, cut your fabric to that length, and then find your centers and your 1/4, measure those all, apply it. If there's any extra, if one side was longer than the other or shorter than the other, the border might not be exactly, so you're going to have to do some easing in, but you want your borders the same length. And when I talk about waviness, that means Some people don't measure. They'll take a piece of fabric this wide, slap it on, sew it on their piece, and then cut their ends and think, okay, I got a border. Well, that border can sometimes be 3 inches too long. I have taken borders off and cut 3 inches off of them and put them back. And it just happens because as you're sewing it, moves it, and all of a sudden you get all these bumps and waves. And unless you want pleats in your borders, I can't quilt. That doesn't happen very often. It's usually just very much a beginner. You give them a little lesson when they pick up their quilt. That's the end of it.
And she's very gentle with her lessons.
You know, and that's something that needs to be told when you're first learning to do the quilting, because no one ever said anything about how you put a border on.
Well,
So my first couple of quilts, I put the border on, like you said. I just laid it on there, sewed it, and cut it. Well, I
Yeah.
was lucky that my quilt was squared.
the larger the quilt, the more danger it is, yeah.
And then I learned
the worse it is.
that you do the 3 measurements and then you work it that way. So,
Okay. I don't know if you saw, I rolled my quilt back now. And so my top of my quilt's way back as far as it can go to the barb where I can still get at it. Don't worry, right now I push my quilt top back because if you could, right here, you could see that my batting is kind of wrinkled. And this is when I'll do it myself though, Kathleen, because some of this batting stretches. So you got to be gentle. This is also when I pick off ravelings. Most quilts, if it's a dark quilt, you won't see a raveling. If it has white and there's dark ravelings under there,
You'll see the ravelings through the white.
you cut. Make sure you bring a quilt to your quilter all trimmed and ready to go. Save him a lot of time. And the batting just, I mean, it's like a magnet to ravels.
You're right. I never would have thought how many ravels could be there. But
This isn't a quick process.
so she's gonna. What are you gonna measure, Beth?
I'm going to measure from my sides to the borders to make sure I'm getting it on straight. I do have a tape measure that's made just for that, but I don't like it. What I do is measure to the inside border.
now, Beth, when you start the quilting on this, do you have to stay with it to finish it, or can you stop and then come back to it later? I mean, you have to leave it on the long arm, but can you leave?
No, I can stop and start whenever I want.
Oh, okay.
Good question, though. And I can also take it off because these leaders have zippers. And I have 3 sets of leaders. So if I'm doing a custom piece, which means I'm doing each block, a different design, I'm doing sashing, I'm doing borders. Some of those take a month or 2 to do because you get tired of doing it. So you want to take it off, do something else. I just zip them off and I can zip them back on. Before I do that, though, I've got to make sure I've really got it stabilized, like stitching in the ditch everywhere and make sure it's.
I have another question then, though, because I know that some people have this. Can you leave the room and go to the bathroom or answer the phone while your long arm is running once you've started your pattern?
When you have a quilt pieced as beautifully as this, no bumps, no problems, yes, I could go upstairs, make dinner, come back down when the row's done. I don't do that very often. I like to be where I can hear my machine.
Mm-hmm.
Because then if I hear something, like a thread got in there, all of a sudden you hear this, you can shut it off right away before it does something awful. The worst thing to do is have to sit here and pick out stitches.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a little bit similar to embroidery. We have a lot of people in the guild that do machine embroidery, and most of us that do machine embroidery don't really dare leave our machines for too long unattended because of the same sorts of issues. And, you know, it's Murphy's Law. If you stick with the machine, it's not going to mess up. But if you go out of the room, that's the time when something goes wrong. Like you're doing another row of basting, Beth, is that
I
right?
baste every. I like to load the entire quilt on, baste it all together before I start quilting. Some people at this point will start their quilting. They'll baste here and then they start quilting. Then they'll roll and then they'll quilt. Well, I get the whole thing done. That way I know if I have any issues.
I'll be darned. I didn't realize you basted other than the top and bottom and sides. So you're basting every row kind of.
I'm basting as far as my machine will go.
Great.
From there to here.
Great.
Oh yeah, you got to keep it from moving around. This will come out before I start quilting. I mean, I never quilt over a base. Your machine can get caught up in that.
Oh.
Out after you fold it over.
Okay, so I'm probably jumping the gun, but then why are you basting it if you're going to take it out before you start stitching again?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
You can't roll the entire quilt on here if I don't baste it. There's no way to get it straight.
Oh, I get it. So the basting serves as a way to keep each portion tight as you roll all three layers together.
So I'm going to roll this whole baby on here before I ever start quilting.
And I'm going to try to do a close-up of the quilt so you can see that Beth is having to kind of straighten out some rumples again, which just...
Yep.
Every time, pull out the rumples, pull out your ravelings. Like I said, if that was a dark quilt, I could care less about any ravels, but it's white. Got a lot of
It's right.
Next time you look at a white quilt at a quilt show, go up there and look for ravels. You see quilters doing that. They were great.
Can't see it because she stepped out of the frame, but Beth is now standing way back and looking at the quilt to see if it looks good, looks symmetric to her, as well as measuring, again, the distance from the backing to the front and the border, etc.
Sometimes it starts to go one way or the other. And then it looks like there's fullness, but that all gets worked in when you're quilting.
Mm.
You asked me if I could leave the room. Sometimes you'll have a quilt where, you know, look, this is a whole lot of seams. You might have a seam that's really bulky. And you want to stand here when your machine hits to where that's bulky to make sure it gets through there without getting caught up on that bulkiness. Or you might have some fullness and you kind of use your hands back and forth to work in that fullness so you don't get any pleats or anything going. So there are times when a long armor can't do anything but stand there.
Now, this may seem obvious, but you're coming back to go from left to right again on this next row, even though the machine was on the right-hand side. So could you have gone from right to left and it just wouldn't work as well, or not really?
I don't know. Habit. I'm left-handed. I like left to right. Machine does work better sewing left to right.
Okay, so here she's going to crank it along a little bit to see that quilt rolling up. And then you heard the click, but there's a lock so that it doesn't roll by accident when you don't want it to roll, right, Beth?
Right. You who are long armors who might be watching this, you might do it another way. So
that is my cue to say that we will have opportunities if we've got some other volunteers that are long armors to do either Zoom demonstrations like this later in the year or live demonstrations at their house. The original plan was to have small groups of 4 or 5 go to long armors' houses and watch them at work. And we had several volunteers for that, but as you know, with COVID, we aren't doing that right now. But this is my little plug about vaccines. We have 2 American affiliated companies who are forecasting vaccine release as early now as October. And if that happens in October, we're going to be back in person a lot sooner than most of us thought. So there's a lot of hope on the horizon. She clipped the top and bottom threads on the end. She's going to advance the quilt again. Lock it. So was that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Carla.
Beth, there's not much left on the overhang. Now, would you go ahead and do another basting row on that?
Yeah, I'm gonna base the final edge just like I did the top, you know?
Okay.
So it's there for your, yep. I like it when it ends with this last one up here, so I don't have to do one more, but that's okay.
So Carla's question, I'm doing a close-up of the quilt top now. Carla's question is that if she bastes about in here, then there isn't very much left, maybe, 9, 12 inches. But what Beth is saying is she's going to baste down here at this edge, even if it ends up being about there, right?
That was a Kathleen's question. I'm going to do this one the opposite direction.
From the right-hand side of the quilt to the left.
Feels odd going down this.
So I'm going to do another close-up because it's easier for me to do a close-up here. There she goes.
And it's the same. I mean, no difference.
But I see what you mean. Because you're left-handed, your tendency is to want to guide with your left hand.
Yeah. And I could still, I guess, do it that way. That makes more sense. I'm ambidextrous. I can do both. Yeah. I have found sometimes when I get to the end and I find out it's not going to be straight, then I do go up the sides instead of down because I try to work the side that's too long. I'll try to work it back up. And I'm hoping this is turning out straight. Down for the back. As you roll more fabric on, you see how thick it gets, and then it starts, it's too thick for my long arm to run under. So this lifts it up and off that arm.
So this is a close-up of the crank. That was the lock. And there's the crank. She's advancing the quilt again and locking it. Didn't have to advance very far because she only has about, 10 or 12 inches left of quilt.
Now, what were you looking for when you were looking back there?
I was just making sure it was up off the arm of the machine, okay, so it would come under it. I also take note of my back as I'm going to make sure there's no creases or wrinkles in the back. Do you ever get a quilt back and it's got a crease sewn into it? Sometimes your back will do a little bit of movement and you get that.
I was going to say, no, I've never gotten a quilt back from a long arm like that, but I've done it myself on my little one.
If somebody's pieced the back and it's just so not straight, you can't help but get a crease in. We try not to. You also don't want wrinkles at batting. All right, one more quick run. Another reason I like to load the whole quilt before I start is to make sure I have enough batting on here.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, if they bring their own batting, they've got it cut so close. I want to make sure there's enough there before I get started.
All right, so we have one basted quilt top.
Okay, so I have all this extra batting. I want to get it cut off because you can't roll that with your quilt and just make a lumpy mess.
I wondered, it seemed like,
Yeah.
now you cut this batting yourself, right? So,
This just came out of the package.
yeah, so it,
I cut off one length, but I didn't cut the other.
cooing that Carla is doing is to Katie, our mascot today. Yes, and that's Katie in Carla's screen.
Yes, I love you too.
So now Beth has trimmed the batting, and as it comes by, you can see my finger. The batting is only an inch beyond the basting line.
Now I'm going to roll it all the way to the front to get my top where I want to start. Now you see why it's basted all the way, or it would not be on nicely.
So she locked the stop back there.
Arm of the machine. That way it's level. You don't want it up high.
So in other words, she lowered the back bar because there's not a bunch of fabric there anymore when she unrolled to the front, the top.
Right.
Now to get your tension right on the side, you use the clamps. And the belt and the strap. This keeps your tension good with your fabric going this way. I spread them out in the beginning until I get my design on.
So we've got 2 clamps on the right-hand side. We're going to have 2 clamps on the left-hand side, serving the same function of pulling the sides of the quilt taut. So we've got the roller bars pulling the top and bottom, and we've got clamps on the sides.